Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here at the Blizzard Esports Arena with only one match left over for WCS EU Challenger Group C. As we've had a pretty awesome day today, we've gotten to a point where there's that one final match. And it's going to be a rematch. My name is PtitDrogo. Of course, I am joined by Cats as we get ready to hop into a PvZ. How you doing, Cats?
Ready to hop? I'm ready to hop.
In-Control made fun of me for saying that, hopping into things.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you hop into things, right? Hop into games.
I don't know that I say that I hop into games, but I can see how it works. Yeah, it works, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Ready to hop. Let's go, Ravi.
I dig it.
Hop with me then.
All right, we're straight up hopping in to our final match for Group C. Again, it's going to be a rematch, Bly versus Drogo. Drogo was able to take the series last time they faced off earlier today, 2-0. But Bly is an unpredictable guy. He's always got some tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if we will see the same maps from these players, or if Bly will maybe ban that second map, which was ever so favorable for Drogo.
Yeah.
Then there's the fact that Drogo
right?
and then there's the fact that Drogo just played against Serral. So Bly might have had some ideas. Bly was mostly favoring Hydras and Banelings. The Adept attack that Drogo did against Serral, I feel like would have worked wonders against the style of Bly, but Serral was going Roaches. So does Bly switch on over to Roaches, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I know that you have experience not only as a competitor, as a team captain, and you help your own players for like Root with a lot of this kind of stuff and this kind of like series planning or planning for a group. Do you think that there is some validity into saying something like, okay, if you're going to face off versus a player that like Serral and you're not expecting to beat him, do you try and maybe not play, I don't want to say don't play your best, because obviously it's not like that, but you're sort of hiding some of your builds because you're saving the really big, important reveals for your series versus Bly?
Yeah, that's just an issue of confidence, right? I would never advise a player against their own confidence. If they say, hey, I'm preparing for Serral, you know, go for it.
Yeah.
Because you can always root and have the upset happen, right? Root for the upset. Anyhow, we are in the game, Ravi.
Indeed, and we're in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, top of the blue Zerg player. It is Bly.
And up here in the top left, it is Little Drogo. Also known as Theo, and I'll let you finish the last name, Ravi.
Yeah, I'll do that right after this game. We got pretty normal opening over here. We got our gateway on the low ground, but it's on this side of the map that things also look pretty normal for a second. There was like a split second where I was like, wait a second, was I not paying attention? I saw the Overlord on the minimap. I was like, are those some lings? No.
I believe this was the first map for them, the first time around, right?
Yeah, it seems possible that this was almost identical map vetoes, but only time will tell as we find out how things will go.
Love it.
Typical Bly.
Doesn't matter if it's in the middle. So long as you can get the hatchery down, that's what you get. Oh, and wow, PtitDrogo actually pulling a lot of probes. He is just unhappy with this. He wants the Nexus right away. He doesn't want to change his build order. This is going to cost him dearly.
Yeah, it costs a lot of lost mining time. And oh man, he even gets the evolution chamber down. For those who don't know, when you build a hatchery, there is a moment, even after you cancel, where the creep spread is actually directly under the hatchery. And you can build other things underneath that for like, I want to say half a second to a full second.
Yeah, maybe about half a second. It's a very narrow window. So Bly making it work. At the same time, that Evo Chamber for me is a little bit questionable because you still have to pay for the canceling of it. And with that many probes, I don't like it. Had there been only like 5 probes out, different story. Then it survives a lot longer.
Drone also ends up dying to just 2 of the probes, which I think is really something that Bly didn't want to have happen. He does get up his 3rd behind this, and he's able to get up a lot of good stuff. And remember, all of those probes not mining does delay Drogo's build by a good bit, like you said, Cats. So that also means that Drogo's going to take a little while to actually put on any kind of pressure onto Bly.
Yeah, absolutely. He pulled a lot of probes. You need about 6 probes to stop the hatchery before it finishes, right? So he could have chosen to maybe drop an extra gateway, apply some extra pressure, say you've invested this much into that hatchery, and the longer he takes to cancel it, the longer the window you have where that money is not utilized. So Drogo opting to go for, I don't want this hatchery at all. I want my Nexus. That's my plan. That's what I'm getting. So pulls a lot of probes, and I feel like he falls a little bit behind from it. then again, I didn't really like the decision to go for the Evo Chamber in this particular situation. Not that I dislike the idea to go for the Evo Chamber in general, but there was so many probes out that it just died right away.
Yeah, it makes sense. And Drogo also going to be compensating for the fact that he had his build so much further delayed that he ends up going for the Stargate as a part of the wall in this game, something that he hasn't been doing at all in some of his previous PvZs today. So I think this is just like a bit of a readjustment saying, okay, well look, my build is a bit thrown off right now. I need to complete this wall, and in case you decide to go full Bly on me. So he's going to be able to get out that Oracle, but this also makes it easier for Bly to scout.
Yeah, but that's fine. I think that the Drogo has been opening with Stargate every game. This time around, he will force out those spores a little bit sooner than he did by opening Phoenix first. And he has a Stalker to take care of the Overlord, which is kind of misplaced by Bly. At the same time, if Drogo, that is, had been opening Phoenix, then the Overlord can just sit wherever because it's gonna die anyway.
Yeah. Well, the first Oracle is out. We'll see if he does follow. Okay, he is going to follow it up with a second Oracle rather than a Phoenix. So first Oracle going to make its way around the map, take its kind of gradual path across, because he knows that this has already been scouted out and that there are likely going to be those Spore Crawlers coming down. I think that one Spore Crawler being built over by the third, but it is the other bases that are just relying on Queens, interestingly enough. So kind of some corners being cut here for Bly.
Yeah, note how Drogo's mixing it up. He knows that Bly answered his Oracle Harass last time around with the 3 Queens. So this time around, he tries the third because he knows that, you know, he identifies that there could be a pattern at play here. Chances are there's going to be 3 Queens at the natural, and there is. And he won't get to do any damage, so... You know, good job by Bly. Now there's a commitment of 2 Oracles, and PtitDrogo really has to make something happen with them. We'll find 2 drones.
Oh.
Not bad.
Yeah, finding 5 drones.
Oh,
might find some transferring ones as well.
Oh my god. That
7
is, yeah,
markers.
that's what he needed.
That's really, really solid damage. And by keeping both of the Oracles alive, one of them barely lost anything even past its shields. He follows this up with some Adept harassment. This is going to be really difficult, I think, for Bly to deal with, because if you look at his units, he's got 1 Ling, and he's got 8 Lings on the way, and Cats, there are more Adepts than I think there are going to be Lings.
Yeah, has PtitDrogo seen the Roach Warren? Because he's going onto the double rower right away.
No, he has not seen the Roach Warren, but he may be expecting it.
Oh, I guess with the Adept commitment, it kind of makes sense just to cover your bases because,
yeah,
you know, if you're going for Adepts, they will counter the Hydro Links, so double row makes a little bit more sense.
Okay, well, the Adepts mostly do get surrounded. A lot of them get picked off over there, and a couple of them do manage to escape out of there alive. Only killing 2 workers, but does force out quite a few Lings. And remember, these are Lings that Bly didn't want to have to make, given how many drones he lost earlier on to the Oracle harassment.
Absolutely, and we see Bly adapting, maybe taking a page from Cyril's book, but unfortunately for him, Drogo is going to be pretty well prepared for this Roach switch, or not so much a switch as it is a change in play from the previous series, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I really like Drogo's position here.
Okay, a couple of lanes making their way over to the third, but a shield battery also going to heal up some of these softened up probes. Sentry's doing a great job of pushing back these Lings. A lot of Sentries warped in, as we are now up to a full 6. So I guess that's actually, yeah, that's a pretty decent number. You can get some okay force shields with that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? He's trying to complement the Immortals with Sentries. Immortals are very mineral-heavy units. They cost 250 minerals and just 100 gas, so the ratio is very much in favor of the minerals. And Sentries are just a good complement to that because they will force field the units, making it so that the Immortals, which are relatively slow, and more than that, perhaps short-ranged, will be able to brawl with the units of Bly.
All right, Roach speed now finished up. We got the Roaches making their way along the right-hand side of the map. The Oracles just barely missing sight of them as they end up retreating up toward the top right. Oh man, Drogo moving out across the map. This could turn into a weirdly okay situation for Bly, because he's going to be a lot closer to his opponent's base than Drogo is to getting some damage.
Does Drogo recall is the question for him. If he does, it's going to be a little bit tricky. He does, but the Sentries might be exposed here.
Okay, Sentries all popping out right alongside those Roaches, and the Immortals a little bit further back, which can be good. A lot of force fields trying to trap in these Roaches. I think one of these Immortals taking some damage, but can survive.
You know, missing a volley in these situations might seem like it's kind of insignificant, but it would have killed an extra 2 Stalkers. If you could just press a button to kill 2 Stalkers, that's what that was, right? So
yeah.
A little bit of a misstep there by Bly, and now PtitDrogo's army is looking scary, scary. If you're Drogo at this point, Bly has gone for a Spire every single game against Protoss for the last little while, so I think that he has to start anticipating a switch, especially after seeing how well his army fares against just the Roaches, right? There has to be a switch, and Bly has been favoring that Mutalistic.
Yeah, now losing, I think, what is that, 8-9 Roaches for just 2 Stalkers. Not an ideal trade there for Bly, who's already...
Is there Blink in play, Ravi?
There is not Blink just yet, so...
yeah, so that's what I would like to see next. And there goes the Twilight Council. But we see that Drogo is willing to push, perhaps, and is making a lot of Stalkers just to anticipate that potential Muta switch. So Bly is not going to be able to take a straight-on engagement. We might see Bly do Bly things, and indeed we will, as he goes for the counter-attack with the Roaches, and I wouldn't be surprised to see his units rally towards Drogo instead of going for a defense.
Yeah, 4th base is going to get picked off almost immediately. The Immortal doing its best to survive. The Pylon does depower Stargate, and one of the Warp Gates. Pro's also being pulled off the line, but at the same time, Drogo has a very scary-looking army on the other side of the map. Just has to be careful of those Corrosive Biles, but he does take a potentially pretty favorable engagement. The problem is he's not really getting up the units to defend back at home.
Yeah, I love this decision by Bly, actually. Instead of going for the Muta, he's used all of his gas into Ravagers, which are going to fare well against the Stalkers, good against the Immortals, much better than the Roaches, as the Immortals will not do extra damage against them, and it helps with the force fields of the Sentry. So I really like that idea. He's saying basically, if I go Muta, I cannot defend this, so I have to go for the base trade. Instead, he uses his Roaches to go Ravagers, and he's put himself back in the game, I think, with it.
Yeah, Drogo ends up having to back up over there. Oh, okay, Drogo sees with the Oracle that all these Roaches and Ravagers are making their way along this side. Corrosive Biles are not going to connect with those Oracles, and he's trying to predict where the Oracles will end up heading. But Bly did so much damage, and he's pulled Drogo all the way back. And like you said, he invested all that earlier gas into the Roaches and Ravagers, but now he's got a bit more gas. He's investing into a few of these Mutas, maybe to help deal with the Warp Prism.
Yeah, and with Bly, you never know how many Mutas he's going to make. That's kind of the scary thing if you're playing against Bly. Right now, he's made only 3. That'll help against the Warp Prism, and it will force Drogo to respond to them. Even though he already has a partial response in Blink Stalkers, we might see some Phoenixes added, and if, you know, Bly doesn't commit any further into the Muta, that might be a good thing for him.
Second Stargate on the way, which Drogo should remember that he had opened up with a Stargate, but he sees those Mutas and maybe just preparing, like you said, Cats, that, hey, what if my opponent does start making a ton of these Mutas all at once?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what Drogo has to kind of anticipate. Bly has only made 3. Then again, Drogo hasn't started Phoenix production from his other Stargate. So I think that's good decision making on both ends here.
Okay. Just that one Phoenix out for now, but here we go. Drogo getting the money revelation down on top of a ton of these Ravagers, but a lot of Corrosive Biles is going to make this an awkward area to engage into.
Gets like a couple of units for free. They're kind of the Stalkers that he didn't take earlier, perhaps. And yeah, this is going to be extremely difficult to break with Corrosive Biles. The force fields are not good enough. We'll pick off a Roach up on the high ground, but he was looking for a few Ravagers down on that low ground.
Yeah, this is just not going that well for Drogo. Bly is taking a commanding lead every single time they make any sort of exchange. As these Corrosive Biles, like you said, they're just landing and hitting so much. Remember that the Immortals, they do a lot of extra damage to armored units, but Ravagers lose the armored tag when the Roaches turn into Ravagers, so they aren't doing the additional damage to them.
Yeah, Banelings are a very interesting choice here, because there's nothing in the army of Drogo that actually needs Banelings to be dealt with. However, Banelings are very supply efficient, even when they're not cost efficient. They're very supply efficient, so they are a great complement to an army that is very supply inefficient, such as the Roaches and Ravagers.
Okay.
So that's his way to scale back into the later game, whereas Drogo, oddly enough, is kind of also in this mid-game. Neither of these players has been really transitioning out of this mid-game, and with just reason, right? Like, Drogo's always been looking for that kill move, and he's been just piling onto the aggression, and Bly has just been looking to defend it. Yeah. So they are kind of trapped in this mid-game limbo.
Yeah, this dance between these two ramps has been so difficult. The Hallucinating Colossus providing some high ground vision as well as, of course, that Observer, but also just maybe scaring his opponent a little bit. At the same time, I like that we've seen these Oracles consistently be able to pick off some of these drones. I would love to see that Spore Caller replaced, though.
Yeah, repositioned, absolutely, and he will.
Couple more of these Roaches and Ravagers going down.
Bly is kind of bleeding out units, and what a blink by Drogo. Very perhaps overconfident blink, but the force fields will make up for that. The Banelings will spill into the army of Drogo, but I don't know. That was a good trade for Drogo, I think.
Yeah.
And again, Bly has been spilling a lot of units down that ramp, poking, and that's not helping his case here. Man.
It looked really close, but I do feel like I agree. And, you know, the Banelings that were spilling down that ramp, but they weren't actually able to make any real connections. Even they were trying to get on top of, say, the sentries, limit down those force fields, which, by the way, Drogo has not really lost many sentries. He lost 5 sentries way earlier on in the game, but he's been able to replace them and keep these sentries alive that have been able to consistently throw out those force fields and cause all sorts of problems for Bly. So it's become a big problem where Bly was preventing his opponent from moving up the ramp, but eventually Bly tried moving down the ramp a bit, and it started backfiring on him.
Yeah, now Drogo looking for a much better angle where he doesn't have to go up a ramp, and this way he's going to be able to trade much more efficiently if he looks to engage. So he's looking for a fight right now. He feels like he's stronger. He feels like he's been trading cost efficiently, but breaking into Ravagers is always a difficult task.
Okay, we got a couple of Banelings trying to go for a bit of a run by. They don't have +2 missile attack, so they are not going to one-shot those workers. But hey, still killing off a decent number, 6 workers, and a lot of them softened up for another counterattack.
Yeah, absolutely, while threatening the army at the same time. So when you don't see a player reacting like that, oftentimes it is that they're looking somewhere else. And these Ravagers and the Biles, they have the ability to do that. They have the ability to say, hey, if you're not looking at your base, you know, I'm gonna bile you.
Yeah, these Stalkers also getting some interesting amounts of damage. I mean, they pick up some of the Queens, which is gonna make it more, I guess, simple for them to do continued harassment later on. And they even decide to blink on top of one of these Ravagers that overcommits a bit too much on the defense. But Drogo backs up and decides to take a 5th base. Behind this, he's gotten up Storm that's about to finish up. He's gotten up a Dark Shrine, which I don't think he's utilized just yet, but he's got a lot of tools in his belt. I don't feel like the same is true for Bly.
Yeah, and the Double Forge. So Drogo has been using these traits. We've been talking about how he's been getting ahead, right? And when nearing max, I mean, the only way to really like lose this game or let Bly easily back into it, at least without any tricks, if you will, is going to be by not teching, right? By staying on that same army composition. So Drogo, very good in identifying that this game might go the distance, goes for the Double Forge, the Storm, and he's just gearing up for, if not a kill move, just at least controlling the game until Bly is starved or bleeds to death.
Okay, we got a Dark Templar warped in defensively over by that 4th. Gonna be able to pick off the Ravager and a couple of these Lings. It's a nice little defensive posture just because it's hard to commit an Overseer to the counterattack as well. But
oh, finds an opening here. This is the positioning that he needed. There's no Biles to prevent this opening from happening, and in that he gains the position to clear that base very easily. Now he will retreat.
Oh man, he's even got a couple of those fake force fields in the form of those stasis traps.
And quite honestly, he doesn't even need to retreat. Drogo could actually kill Bly, I think, or at least trade favorably. But retreating is the safer option here, right? It says, you know what, my economy is far better than yours. I don't have to end the game right now.
It is interesting, though, because I do feel like, I mean, both of these players have been building up little bits of bank because they were so close to maxed out for so long. Bly's not really spending his bank, though, even though he does have the Larva and the resources for it. Oh, God, he's eating the Storms as well. Yeah,
he might just be looking for an opportunity to switch into Mutas, but you know, maybe he just wants a massive amount of Mutas, like 25, if he can ever get the bang for it. But first he's gonna have to deal with this. I'm not sure. Does he have the Larva?
He does have. He had 14 Larva, so he has some. Not enough to make. Okay, yeah, he's gonna make 14 Mutas. And maybe those next round of Larva injects will pop off soon. But he has not really been injecting because he's been so focused on just trying to deal with this army. He's also lost a lot of his Queens, which were there on the defense. So his Larva is actually going to be a bit of a limiting factor here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he wanted to make a lot more Muta than that. He's still saving up a little bit of a bank, so I'm not sure if the problem is the Larva. The problem is the Larva at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so at this point. He's already out of Larva. He's trying to make 6 more Mutas, but these mutas have got to not only take out all the Stalkers, but then they've also got to clear out the Immortals, which, by the way, how many Immortals are we up to? Is that 13 Immortals? 15 Immortals on the map. Okay, that's a reasonable number of Immortals.
Yeah. Some would say that, Ravi. A reasonable number.
Okay, well, we got the mutas coming in, but it's just not enough. GG, and Drogo is going to end up taking that first game.
Yeah, very well played by him. I think just it was a strange game, but Bly really made it back into the game, right? With that Roach into Ravager switch, I feel like he was falling really far behind. And with that defense, I felt like he went back into it. Unfortunately, the Muta switch, Drogo didn't take the bait. He went for the second starport, but didn't make any Phoenixes. Yeah. He saw 3 Muta. He was like, make more. Otherwise, my Stalkers are good. Yeah. Right. So very well done by him, just controlling the map and eventually letting Bly bleed to death.
And like you said, if there were those mutas made a little bit earlier on in larger numbers, he would have still been prepared because he had the 2 Stargates to pump out multiple Phoenix at the same time. He would have had the opportunity to respond. But on top of that, I think it was, like you said, Bly got into a really nice spot in a lot of ways where he was able to start pulling himself back with a defense. But at some point during that defense, it felt like, you mentioned this before, Bly was just bleeding out a few too many units, and things started to kind of backfire on him.
Yeah, trying to go down the ramp. And I mean, you have to make something happen because the Protoss player is going to find the resources and having that map control to just continue to tech up. And Bly had committed most of his gas into Ravagers, into that tech, into that defense. So he was hoping that PtitDrogo would attack into it, but Drogo was too smart for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that does mean that we're going to hop into game number 2. I know we were really looking forward to seeing what map was going to be chosen for game number 2, what map made through the videos, because last time these two players faced off against each other, they went to Backwater, and that was a map that I know you were saying is generally considered a little bit more Protoss favored because you can grab that easy 3rd, and even the 4th base I feel like is pretty easy for a Protoss to grab.
Yeah, the 4th is a little bit more open,
yeah.
But, you know, usually Zerg timings are geared towards denying the 3rd, because once you're on 3 base, as any race, really you can get close to or max out easily, right? So you don't really need the 4th base economy to do that, and thus the 4th is less important, just like the 3rd is less important than the natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see what ends up being chosen for map number 2 in this particular best of 3. Remember that this is the decider match. You'll see who's going to be the second player to make it out of the group. The loser of this series doesn't get to go to the playoffs. They are knocked out of Challenger. The winner is going to get that second spot in the playoffs. And also, of course, that comes with a bit more prize money, comes with more WCS points, which helps out with seeding at the big WCS events and other seasons of Challenger. I mean, there are so many benefits to getting those WCS points and just making even a slightly deeper run in Challenger.
Absolutely. And for Bly, I mean, there's a lot on the line here for him. When I was talking to him, he was saying, I'm trying to prepare for DreamHack Austin, and before that, kind of just take it easy. But hey, if you don't make it here, you know, you're gonna have to go through the open bracket in DreamHack Austin. So
it's not easy. The going through it, you know, I think this is something that is sometimes also underrated as well. Is when you talk about those big WCS events, when you get the seed into Group Stage 3 or something for those. It's not just about the fact that, oh, cool, like, yeah, you guarantee yourself a spot there. It's also just about the stamina that's required to play through Group Stage 1, Group Stage 2, then Group Stage 3, and then like, okay, cool, go to bed and wake up to play in the playoffs versus, okay, play one group stage, cool, go to bed, now go play in the playoffs. It's a very, very different.
They're very long days as well. I mean, these players are used to playing StarCraft all day, but like you said, when you add in the travel and the sleeping adjustments, right, when you have to kind of change your schedule around the tournament, because that's inevitable, especially for Europeans, yeah, it becomes harder, for sure.
Well, we're going to be starting down in the bottom right, on top of the blue Zerg player. Put your hands together for Bly.
And in the... You told me to.
I hope that everyone else could hear that, though. I'm like, how mic'd up are we?
Yeah, and in the top left-hand side, playing as the red Protoss, it is PtitDrogo. Put your hands together, Ravi. Yay. Love it.
Okay. Well, we got a pretty typical opening once again. I always feel like I have to say that whenever there's Bly playing, just because you see that he's building up the resources to make the hatchery first. He's not going to go for the Ling opening. Just because Bly is the kind of player who would not only go for a proxy hatch, but he's also the kind of player who will go for something like an early pool, try and pick off the pylon over on the low ground, just make things sort of snowball.
Throw a wrench into your opponent's plan, right? And we've seen that Drogo wasn't so, well, I don't want to say so good at reacting to that proxy hatch, but I really liked the position that Bly put him in, because Drogo reacted in a way that he said, no, don't mess with my plan. This is my plan. This is what I want, right? He wasn't ready to perhaps adapt on the spot and do something else with those resources. And in doing that, I think he set himself behind by pulling that many probes. But, you know, he recovered pretty nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important thing to note, because that is the kind of player that Bly wants to be. He's the player that wants to mess with your plans, get in your head, and just throw you off balance. If he's unable to do that, I think that Bly loses a substantial amount of his power in a series, or just, I guess, the fear factor that comes with playing Bly.
Absolutely. I mean, and when you see a player react in a way that you're happy with, like, say, if I was proxy hatching Drogo and I saw that reaction and I felt like that put me ahead.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
He is committing so much mining time. He's easily lost, I want to say, like 150 resources.
Ooh,
of mining
I don't
time.
know. That's a lot, but yeah.
He
Maybe.
pulled off the drones on
I mean, they're
gas.
still chasing. They're still chasing. I'm not sure what's...
That was a lot. That was a lot of mining time lost.
And you know, when they're chasing like past the ramp or into that ramp, like you're wondering, okay, like the probe is not gonna turn around.
You know what? I think the funniest thing is?
What?
I think that Bly wants to make it look like he's doing something really cheeky, and I think he's gonna just not do anything.
Yeah, perhaps that's the case. But like I was saying, if I were Bly, I would have maybe tried to proxy hatch again.
Taking the back third base is really, I think, unusual for a Zerg player on this map, just because it only has 4 mineral patches, so usually it's not super ideal to take this unless you just want a very safe third. But Zerg players, like you said before, don't usually have too much trouble taking the more forward location.
Yeah, it might have been that he saw the probe heading towards the third after he stopped chasing, and maybe that's why he was chasing, just so that Drogo would click the probe back to his base, and he would be able to take that base. But in seeing the probe return when the drones were, you know, when the drones stopped chasing, maybe he decided, well, I have to wait for either Lynx to clear that probe or just take the other base.
Indeed. All right, the Adepts are shading around. He's also gotten a scout out on that location for that third base. We got, a lot of drones going down as we have Adepts in the main base that are able to peel off, I think, 3 workers. And this Adept over by the Natural, able to get up a couple more kills, even finding a nice spot behind the mineral line, focus firing down workers. Recalls the Adept. Are you kidding me? He gets out of there alive?
MacGyver.
Oh, 4 drone kills. 4 drone kills, cats.
He's a hero. Just don't use him anymore in the game. You know, you just... yeah, you just hide him somewhere. Yeah, let him retire. That's what you do.
Oh, well, we'll see how Drogo ends up treating his veterans. As, of course, this is a nice map because you get to take that nice back third base that's very safe for a Protoss player.
If you want to, right? One thing that I would love to see, for example, is a Protoss player utilizing that to their advantage. Like if you see or know that there's no overlords simply by identifying where the overlords are in position to spot for that third, maybe you just let the Zerg assume that you've taken that third and go for an all-in. I wouldn't mind that at all.
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen players... I might have even seen Drogo do that at some point, but there's a lift up on one of the Queens. No Spore Crawlers here as Bly is trying to cut corners to make up for the losses he took earlier on. And now he might even end up... Okay, he's going to be able to keep that drone alive. The Oracle getting pretty low on hit points. I mean, this ends up not being the worst defense here for Bly.
No, it was a brilliant defense, actually. He moved all the Queens where the Spore wasn't. And again, anticipating that Drogo likes to or would pick up 1 Queen with a Phoenix. That makes it so that 2 Queens are not enough to defend against the Oracle before he does too much damage. So he says, I have a Spore in my other base. I put my 3 Queens on this base. There's no way that he goes to my third without taking a lot of damage or the Oracle dying potentially to these 3 Queens or my Spore, right? Like no one would go straight to the third. So then he makes the Spore at the third last. Just an excellent defense by Bly.
Yeah, and the Hydra Den does come down behind all of this. I think it got thrown down after the Phoenix left. Yeah, the Phoenix came in, saw pretty much everything that there was to see, but right after it leaves, Bly ends up throwing down that Hydra Den. I think it's pretty much expected the Hydra Den will come down, but Drogo may feel like it's going to come down maybe a little bit later than he originally would have assumed.
Yeah, definitely. And Drogo taking a very late third, and that is because he once again chose to tech up first. be safe and going for that Archon harass.
8 gateways, and he's got 47 workers. We'll see if he continues producing more. 47 is enough that you can start, if you can, after you've thrown down and made a bunch of your early round of units for harassment, you can go back into worker production. A lot of the time, though, there are some Protoss all-ins where you'll stop at 42 to 44 and just go for it off of 8 gateways, and you fake out a third. This might actually be the case.
I mean, it's not so much a fake third, it's a fallback plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna see what could have been a two-pronged attack had Bly not positioned his queen so nicely, and Phoenix spotted the queens in the main base, so no chance for Drogo to go in there. Now he's pushing into a pretty tough spot to push into.
This is just shut down, I think. This is a really, really strong hold here for Bly.
It is a strong hold, but Drogo hasn't lost any of the Archons, and those are the expensive units here, the units that he doesn't want to lose, the core of his army. So he's traded some Zealots for Hydralisks, and if we actually look at the resources lost, it's not all that bad for Drogo.
Yeah, Drogo is not too much further behind, and like you said, he's keeping alive the expensive units. I love the decision. Oh, Bly, he ends up canceling. Okay, he went for a full wall off over at his natural ramp, knowing that the Zealots were a heavy part of the composition, but now we got the Archons dropping into the main base. Big Zealot warping at the same time. He's going to come sweeping on forward with a bunch of the Zealots over by the third location.
Yeah, so Drogo finding the opening that he hasn't been able to find so far by identifying that the queens were on the low ground for that defense and tanking for the Hydralisks. He's like, okay, now do you have anything at your main, right? He's been looking for that opening and now finds it. Goes into the main, forces the army back, pulls Bly's attention and picks off the fourth. Beautiful move.
And now Bly is in an awkward spot because he's lost the more important base of his 2 potential third locations, which is the one that had 8 mineral patches. Now he's only got those 4 mineral patches to work with. He's building a lurker den and trying to take the low ground expansion now, but this is... the lurker den takes so long to build, Counts. Do you feel like this is maybe even going to be something that can work out? If it's going to take too long or what?
I think that Bly uses his reputation to his advantage oftentimes, so we see him taking up really hard because a lot of the times people is like scared of Bly attacking, and so attacking into Bly, especially after shutting down an attack that convincingly earlier and knowing that Drogo just committed to kill a lot of Bly's economy, and Bly has a large army. I find it to be a good decision. It's unlikely, I think, that Drogo will attack in that span of time, unless he identified that there's a lurker then going down. And
that is a good point. I mean, the 4th base is only just now getting thrown down. He, of course, also didn't really get up a large number of workers behind all of this. He's only sitting on 55, so in a lot of what you're saying, it does seem like Drogo's almost just preparing for a big attack that didn't really come. He's got Storm now, and Bly does still have a pretty scary-looking army with the lurker den finishing up. Maybe this is his opportunity.
Yeah, Bly's opportunity is going to be if Drogo is overly defensive and the lurkers can get position to maybe siege onto that 4th of Drogo. But so far, oh my god, Drogo is going to identify that Bly is out on the map just by virtue of his units not arriving back in time. And he's going to make some more units, a few more warp-ins. And this is pretty deadly.
Yeah, these Archons are just raking in the kills, and he pulls the entire army back around the time that the Lurker Den is finished up. And this also gives Drogo an opportunity to move across the map and get aggressive.
Excellent move.
He's going after the hatchery.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, I think the Hydras might have been spotted in the middle of the map. That was a big commitment onto the Warp Prism, and it wouldn't have been such a great idea if Bly had been sitting back. Right, and now Drogo reclaims map control, which is super important. Again, I want to stress on this because it's super important against the Lurkers. Lurkers are very positional units. Now they have to burrow and unburrow all the way to PtitDrogo's base if they ever want to be aggressive, right? So instead, now he's going to be forced onto a defensive position, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Drogo transition once again into that air composition. We see the fleet beacon, probably just for a mothership for starters, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a carrier transition from here again.
Yeah, eventually can decide to go into that, and I like that he's just continuing to poke and prod, not really committing, and just forcing Bly, one, to make sure that he's always in the right position, because if he's not, then that's another hatchery sniped off. But two, he's keeping Bly at home. Like you said, the lurkers can't be used offensively if they're constantly on the defense.
Exactly, and Bly has been far behind, or at least even with a Protoss and economy, which is not usually what you want to have. So what do you do if you're Bly right now? Again, I really would like to see maybe a Nidus, right? That cuts down the travel distance for those lurkers. Or drops. If you just commit to harassment, maybe if he pumps out more drones, that would be the way to go. But right now he's pumping out units, so maybe gearing up for a bigger attack, even though he's pretty pinned back in his base right now.
Oh man, he's losing more and more of these workers. The Archon's getting some good work done. The Warp Prism is going to be able to warp in Dark Templar soon as well. This is one of the Archons, unfortunately. But that's still a lot of the Hydras that got pulled over to the side and 8 workers killed off.
Yeah, Drogo's gonna revelate and see that there's a lot of lurkers, just gonna back away, but notice he maintains position, right? So he's maintaining position. A, he has recall if he somehow got surprised by something like a Nidus, or just Bly sneaking out somehow. But he needs to really just keep tabs on where the lurkers are and contain them.
And he's doing that with the revelations being thrown down on almost every single one of the lurkers.
And there's that carrier transition.
Okay. And as soon as the lurkers unburrowed and tried to move forward, Drogo pokes forward and says, no, you can't leave. The lurkers have to reburrow into that location. And again, it's like you said, Drogo is just preparing for that transition and getting and buying himself so much space for it.
Yeah, taking a 5th base as well. He's saying, I don't have to engage you. And again, this is where I think Bly needs to make something happen, right? Because if you're just pinned back there, that's just a lot of wasted supply in units. Oh, and he is doing something. Yeah. That is Bly's answer. It's the big surprise.
Yep, he's been hiding these mutas kind of in the corner, hoping that they don't get scouted. He has to be very careful about this. He's got up to about 22 that are going to be coming out soon.
Yeah, he might just continue to hide until he gets maxed, really. This move was known as the Alastor back in the day.
Oh my god, Alastor. Oh. He was a Copa America player, right?
He's a Spanish player. He was a
Spain, yeah. Okay, well, got a carrier making its journey down to the south side of the map and a mothership making its way. Oh my god, is he gonna recall? Is he gonna recall his army into the main base?
Yeah, I think he can afford to be fancy here.
Yeah, I think he can do that, and if there is something that gets a little bit too dicey, he could always recall his mothership and rest the army out with the Nexus, but...
Okay, get ready to yell fancy.
All right, well, here we go.
Here's the big surprise.
Okay, carriers are about to pop out.
That's not the unit that you want to have pop up, and instead Drogo's going to be forced to recall home, so the mothership is not going to be recalling anything. Or actually, it might, after you push back the Muta. And look at this. He's going to leave the Archons and recall the army into the main base, I think, of Bly.
I think the mothership is still retreating. Yeah.
I would have loved to see that because he split his army in a way that it was signaling for that. I'm not sure why he sent the rest of his army to the back of his base.
Oh my god, he's gonna find the mothership.
Yeah, the mothership. Oh
nope. I think he tried to recall the army there. Wasn't because you know it's gonna go down anyways. Might as well try.
Yeah. Do these guys have blink?
No, they do not.
Yeah, so they are pretty much desperation stalkers until the Phoenix arrive. There's 3 Phoenix out. Is there? Yeah, there's the crystals, right? Huge range on those Phoenix. So Bly's window is shrinking. He has to do damage right me out.
Okay, Storm's coming down on top of the Mutas, softening up a lot of them. That's going to be very helpful for these Phoenix to start getting some pickoffs here. But the Phoenix might go a little bit too far forward, even with the Anion Pulse Crystals. Bly doing a great job kind of baiting the Phoenix forward and then turning around, sniping them off one by one.
Yeah, unfortunately for Bly, none of those Templars, or very few of those Templars died. At least 3 survived, 3 of the ones that stormed. So that would have been a good pickoff with the Muta. But, you know, he's managed to kind of make himself somewhat back into this game. He's still pretty far behind in tech. Mutas are not brawlers. They're not gonna fare good in a straight fight, and that was kind of his one one-off try to do insurmountable amounts of damage, right? And he did okay. He did okay.
Oh man, and there are a lot of Archons out on the map now. I think the problem is that even if there is an overcommitment to more Phoenix, whereas we end up seeing Bly maybe stop producing a lot of these mutas, the carriers are still so powerful versus most of the ground forces that I think Bly will be able to muster out.
Finds an opening though, no cannon there.
Yeah, and
Will force the Phoenix back, and actually the Phoenix fly over the muta.
Yeah, loses one of them, loses a second one, gonna lose a third, almost the fourth one going down, but 18 workers also picked up and pulls the entire army, Zealots, Stalkers, and Carriers all back. This is a very, very effective use of these mutas as they're gonna probably go out for this game.
Yeah, they were gonna die anyway, so that wasn't too bad. One thing that I would have liked for the mutas to do is head towards the next mineral line. The fourth was already depleted, or not many probes mining there, so he might have been better off going there to the natural base. So right after you kill all the probes there and the Phoenix are chasing you, you can sure turn around and snipe a Phoenix or two, but you have to threaten probes so that the Phoenix are forced to stand in place and fight those mutas.
Oh boy, Bly has to be so careful about this though. He can try and get a couple of pickoffs as the stray units.
Oh man, those lurkers morphing Ravi. That's not a good time, and that's gonna be the signal for Drogo to move in and snipe this fourth or this fifth.
Okay, yeah, using the carriers to get some extra damage done. Has to back up as he gets outside of the carrier leash range. Of course, lurkers set up in a nice spot to help deal with any of the Zealots that come charging forward, but that's a lot of Archons, Cats.
Yeah, the Immortal count is very low, however, still, Drogo is gonna choose to snipe the base. Now it seems just go for the fight for the kill move.
Yeah, the Corruptor count is just not high enough to really contend with the carriers. The Archons, the Storm, the Immortals all charge forward. They take care of all the lurkers, and Bly has fallen down to nearly half the supplies of his opponent. Drogo was already sitting up 1-0, and if he is able to win this game, that does secure him a spot in the playoffs, which I'm sure he's going to feel pretty happy about right now.
Yeah, and he surely will. I mean, yeah, you can't argue that he doesn't deserve it. He just 4-0'd Bly. Well played by Drogo.
Well played indeed, and congratulations. He is going to be our second player to make it out of WCS EU's C group.
Yeah, one thing about this entire series, I think, as the story of it, I feel is Bly was very good at coming back into these games, like making himself this little openings where he would just kind of come back.
Yeah.
But he always seemed to fall behind at the start or some point in between, right?
Yeah, I felt like it was exactly what you're saying. He'd either fall behind at the start, or he would also just have trouble closing out a situation where he was actually starting to come back, or he had gotten some sort of lead. He had trouble like making that into a decisive victory or something. And that ended up kind of costing him. But Drogo did a great job kind of exploiting that, utilizing that, and finding the opportunities. And like you said, making it out by basically defeating Bly 4-0.
Very powerful.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that does do it for Europe, but we still have North America coming up in just a little bit. Hope you guys decide to stick around for that. We got more Zerg players. In fact, I think it's if I recall correctly, it's going to be Masa, our lone Terran. Then we have Cicada. We also, aka Volts, he renamed himself at some point. Starkiller and Panda Bear Me. So should be a fun group for Group C.
Should be a fun group. Masa probably the Cyril of this group, if you will.
You know, Masa is such, oh man, I can talk a lot about Masa and stuff. He's such an interesting guy because I feel like he is the player that is one of the most inconsistent, I should say, of every single player that's shown up in Challenger this season, including in Europe, just because there are sometimes he just loses to things he shouldn't be losing to, or players.
I feel like this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, in that there's no breaks in StarCraft, so you kind of have to pick and choose when to slow down and when to ramp up. I feel like when Masa is in good shape, he's in good shape.
All right, but ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be in a little bit. Please don't go anywhere. You were watching WCS EU Challenger, and you will be watching WCS NA Challenger.
Yes, you will.